You must unite what is innocence.
We are TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Revolutionary Radio Project. I am your host, Rob Skiba, and this evening I am joined with my guest, Robbie Davidson. Robbie, are you there?
I'm here. Thanks so much for having me on, Rob.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Short notice at that. Well, we've got some conferences coming up, and I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to inform our listeners a little bit more about what's happening in the near future. You're going to be, speaking of future, the conference coming up in August is the Back to the Future conference hosted by John Gabrielson. This year's theme is Genesis, Battle for the Foundation. It's going to be August 19th and 20th, and I was excited to find out that you're going to be joining us there.
Yeah, I'm really excited meeting, obviously, you for the first time, but also John Pounders and also David Kriko. It's going to be just absolutely a great time. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. And I'm going to actually get a lot deeper into the subject matter as far as enclosed creation and scientism and again, into other matters when it comes into Genesis. So I think it's going to be a great time. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've done that conference, 5 or 6 times now, I think. It's usually fairly small, intimate crowd, anywhere from 50 to, I think on the high side, we had maybe a couple hundred one year. But it's usually a really good crowd, however many show up. And honestly, sometimes I like the smaller crowds even better because you can kind of spend more time with people. But I know that this year he's wanting to kind of focus our attention on Genesis, the battle for the foundation. And I know that's a subject that you're passionate about also. And you're, why don't you tell our listeners, some of them have heard you before because I've had you on the broadcast before, but just maybe perhaps as a refresher for them and for people who are just joining us for the first time hearing about you, tell us a little bit about some of the documentaries that you've put out recently.
Well, I think one of note would be The Global Lie. That was kind of one of the bigger ones that I came out with, and that was in 2015. And I actually had featured quite a bit of you, Rob, in that documentary. And that just kind of got within this whole topic about, what exactly is going on and getting into, the deceptions that we face. And more recently, I came out with Scientism Exposed. And that was my first major kind of release on a DVD. I released it on DVD as well, so it kind of provided that opportunity that people wanted to hand them out, or and so many people have actually been like putting them in libraries and handing them to relatives, and because sometimes you look at it and sometimes people won't go to a 2-hour YouTube video, but if they have a DVD on their coffee table, it's a great way. So it was just a great tool, but also I offered it for free on YouTube on the same day. So I kind of did something a little strange where I basically put it on YouTube and DVD was offered on the same day, but it was absolutely the response was absolutely fantastic. I'm busy working on releasing Scientism Exposed 2 coming out this fall. It will actually be premiering at another conference we're going to be talking about tonight. It is Flat Earth International Conference, but it will be premiering there this November. So really excited, putting a lot of work into it. And I'm excited to announce that nobody really knows this, but, Rob, you're going to be featured in the documentary. So it's going to be great to get down to Texas next month so that we can start shooting some footage and get some real good interview footage. I think there's going to be some really deep subject matters we're going to get into, but we're really going to go to the next level in scientism. Scientism Exposed. The first film was basically kind of just to start giving you these ideas and asking questions. And the one thing that I make clear with many people, and I think it's a great tool for people that are, 100% they're for flat Earth, this is a great tool for people that are maybe turned off by the whole thing, because it doesn't mention flat Earth even once in the entire documentary. So I wanted to kind of present something where I don't even mention those 2 words, but start getting people to question everything they've been taught, and most people had already kind of found out the lies with Darwinism and evolution. But then it's like, well, let's turn our attention, let's look up and let's start, questioning the cosmology, and then when you get into geocentrism, versus heliocentrism and these type of things, well, there's a lot of things coming forward now, a lot of investigations, and it doesn't seem to be the way, what we've been taught. But it shouldn't surprise us, because if the same spirit is behind the deception, trying to discredit the foundations of the Bible, right back to Genesis. Once you rock a foundation, everything falls like a house of cards. And I think this is why the subject matter is so important. Truth matters, but when it comes to the entire assault on the Bible, I think this was probably the most ingenious, not giving, Satan more credit than's due. But again, here it's masqueraded not in an opposing belief system or, an optional, theory to be, against the Bible. This is something that you can't debate. It's fact, it's truth, it's science. And I think science, that word has been thrown around, everything's science. And we're finding out that a lot of it has been scientism all along, which I believe, has more than just an agenda. It's a deception. And there's very powerful entities that, work behind the scenes. I tell people all the time that a sophisticated lie like this is too brilliant. The amount of work would be done. It's beyond human intellect. It is of the spiritual. And this is an assault. And you can see it in the words that these propped up scientists, are talking. You can see it in their words. And I've put that in my documentary films, The Global Lie, Scientism Exposed, other works that I've done on my channel, Celebrate Truth. I have showed very clearly that, for example, Lawrence Krauss, he says, forget Jesus dying for you. Thank the stars for dying. It's because the stars died that we were born. And I'm thinking, this is direct assaults. This is on the lines of blasphemous remarks. And again, these guys will come off and say, oh, we're atheists. We don't believe in a God. Well, why are they going against just this one? They're not taking pot shots at Buddha. They're not going against Muhammad. They're not going against New Age or the occult or even Satan, for that matter. They're taking shots at Jesus. And I find that very, very intriguing. But again, we shouldn't be surprised when we start seeing that the God of this world is clearly stated from the Bible. And again, this has been a program that's been in place for millennia.
Yeah, right on. And you mentioned Lawrence Krauss, and you listen to all these guys, and they're all putting the same message forward. And somebody had posted a link to an article that I reposted today on my Facebook page. It says, NASA has released the largest picture ever taken, and it will shake up your universe. And in the third paragraph, it says, prepare to feel extremely tiny and insignificant. And it goes on to say, as you marvel at this fly-through of this supposed high-resolution photo of the Andromeda galaxy. And I was struck by that opening sentence there in the third paragraph, because that's the message. Prepare to feel extremely tiny and insignificant. Carl Sagan used to be fond of saying the insignificant pale blue dot that's just, orbiting an average sun and an average solar system of an average galaxy in the backwater corner of the universe and blah, blah, blah. Like constantly putting forward the idea that you are nothing, you are insignificant, and doing everything they can to discredit what is said in Genesis. And, I take a lot of flack from both the Christian and the Torah community, and people saying, this is a distraction, it's a psyop, it's a this, it's that, the other thing. And I'm going, wait a minute. And some going so far as to accuse me of, being in league with Satan to talk about these. And I'm going, okay, wait a minute. Show me precedence in the Bible anywhere where the activity of the devil draws people to a closer relationship with God, makes them want to read their Bible, and draws them into a saving knowledge of Yeshua or Jesus Christ. Where do you see that anywhere in the Bible? I don't see it, but I do see people writing to me on an almost daily basis. I'm sure you're getting the same thing. Testimonies of people, many former atheists, either picking up a Bible for the first time or having read the Bible realize that God is real and they need to have a relationship with him. Has that been your experience?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, the testimonies are absolutely extraordinary. I mean, another amazing channel on YouTube, The Truth is Stranger Than Fiction.
Yeah.
He's done a fantastic job in compiling
Yeah.
Just an enormous amount of testimony. So, we've worked together. We've done stuff on the global lie, and just a really great brother and stuff. And he does a lot of stuff, analyzing everything that's going on and looking at different creation ministries. And, he's not attacking them. He's just saying, hey, let's hold back for a second. You're so adamant, with the lies and the conspiracy theory to cover up, all of the Piltdown man and the stuff in evolution. Well, isn't it, conceivable to think that they could be lying about other aspects of science? And again, remember that the evolutionary lie hits at the origins. So what I find suspect is anything that hits at the origins is kind of where Satan's number one assault has to be, because he has to completely change your self-worth, your dignity, your value. He has to align it with him in the future, for the coming deception or the Antichrist or whatever. But what I'm saying is he looks at the origins, and those are the most detrimental scientific truths or proofs that they throw at us and say, nope, the reality is that, you come from a rock. The reality is, we're just a little, pale blue dot, and there's trillions and billions of other ones. Well, wait a minute. The Bible's very clear when it says that everything that we see in the sky were made for us. Okay? So the question is now the stuff that you can't even see with your eye, that they claim that are out there in 18 trillion light years away. What purpose, would it be, And again, a lot of times people will say, well, you know what, God, created the bang and he spoke everything to existence. And I'm like, yeah, I did that for years. I mean, I'm definitely guilty for attaching God to the entire Big Bang heliocentric construct. And again, I wasn't trying to do anything disservice. I wasn't trying to be devious or anything. I was just being I was trying to glorify God rather than saying it happened by accident. But the problem there is if you follow that line of thinking, you got a big problem in Genesis when you find out that the earth was created before the sun, moon, and stars, right?
And
any scientist that you sit down with, they're going to tell you absolutely no. It was, it was stars, it was suns, these things were existing first. And it's interesting, but if you actually look at everything when it comes to comparing scientism and the Word of God, the Bible, everything is complete opposite. If they say that it was the sun, moon, and stars, then it was planets or whatever. It's backwards in every which way. Not to mention when you get to the stars, they're 18 trillion miles in diameter or whatever, and yet the Bible says they're all going to fall to the earth. Well, People say, well, that's figurative. That's figurative, and you could look in certain books and maybe give them that. But then what do you do though when you have Jesus, you have the Messiah sitting there, and he's talking completely in context about certain events that are going to happen in the end times? It says people are going to be running, into caves. Well, is that figurative? Is that poetry? Well, no, it's not. People are running. He's explaining it. But he also says all the stars you see are going to fall, to the earth. So we got a big problem when it comes to modern day science and what they've taught us. But again, it's just, if it was only a couple of things, we might not even have this platform. I mean, we wouldn't be taking the abuse that we take. But the question is, why are we out talking about this when we have hate mail and we've got people going psycho? I've never seen anything, mild-mannered people. You bring up this topic and it's almost like spiritual. Something's going on.
Sure.
Why would it bother them that much? But they get upset. Like they'll cling to it and they'll defend it with a passion. It's almost like, how dare you? It's like their whole worldview. And I understand it to an extent, because if your entire worldview, you're safe in your worldview. Even in a biblical worldview, you're safe. When someone comes along and tries to rock that, it's a very scary premise. So I do kind of understand that. And that's why you kind of come at people, with compassion, with patience. Not everyone's on the same track. Or for example, we went from looking into 9/11, then we went to Illuminati and the bloodline families, and we looked at chemtrails, and all of a sudden we're into the moon landing, and now we're into this flat earth. Well, what if someone hasn't even really looked into 9/11 and understand how devious and how satanic that entire thing was, and exactly with the official story, how faulty that was? Well, if they're still questioning 9/11, they're not really sure. They're thinking, maybe that could be the official way, and they really don't understand the way the world's working. They're not ready for a deception this big. It's too big for their mind. So I just look at it where are you on that track? Most people that I talk to that are in flat earth, they already were woken up to 9/11. Most of them were woken up to the Illuminati bloodline families, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers. They've looked into this. So the question is, are they more prepared? Are they at a certain point? So not to say that we shouldn't keep talking about this, but again, we just have to understand that certain people are at certain levels, and I guess we have to have some patience. We got to kind of keep, talking, but at the end of the day, we are standing on the Word of God, and we're saying, look, we're going to take it literal. And what is wrong with that?
Yeah. Many Christians would probably say that they are Bible-believing Christians, that they hold the Bible as their source for truth. And I was just as guilty of it. they will try to force a spinning heliocentric globular Earth model in an ever-expanding universe into the text. And when I finally, was open to the idea of looking into this subject, and the reason I did, frankly, is because Mark Sargent challenged me. He said, "Okay, I understand you believe the globe. Great, that's awesome. Prove it." Now, and do so without using NASA, the government, or the military of any nation as your source. Well, of course, the first thing you do is use something that was given to us by NASA, the government, or the military of some nation as your proof, a picture of the Earth from space or whatever, supposedly from a satellite. But as soon as I started really looking into that and seeing, 25-hour rotation time lapse of the Earth and the clouds aren't moving, and seeing multiple different versions of the blue marble where everything's shifting and looking different, and then you actually see in the fine print that they tell you it's a composite, and you go, what? And then I said, okay, I'm going to go back to the text, and I'm going to do the best I can to remove my preconceived bias of a spinning heliocentric globular Earth. I'm going to pretend I don't even know what a ball is. I've never even heard of a globe. And I'm going to see and I didn't get far, man. I mean, you don't get too far in Genesis chapter 1, and I got stopped dead in my tracks with the firmament. Because there was a phrase there that said that he put the sun, moon, and stars in the firmament that I couldn't get around. Because I was a Kent Hovind, Carl Baugh, enclosed, a canopy theory guy. I taught it myself as recently as December of 2014. Talked to Mark in April of 2015, so just a few months later. And my whole life, I was, as long as I was able to understand the creation model, I was talking about the ice canopy idea of the firmament. And then for the first time, my eyes were opened, and I saw that doesn't work, because the canopy theory requires the sun, moon, and stars to be outside the firmament. But there it is in. So I'm like, oh, maybe it's an English translation problem. So I checked other English translations. They're all saying in. And I looked in the Hebrew, and that's when I got stuck, because the word is rakia, firmament, but it says in the firmament, and that's berakia. They put the Hebrew letter bait before the word, and whenever the bait is before a word as a prefix, it serves the function of saying in. In fact, it's the first letter in our Bible, in the beginning, Bereshit, in the beginning. So, and in many Torahs, it's actually, we might say it's a larger font size. If the rest of the text is written in, like, let's say 12 or 14 point font, it's like 20 or 30 point, the bait, in. And I'm going, what? So I appreciate that John's wanting to go back to Genesis, and my hope is that at this conference that we're able to do it in a way that everybody is able to sort of take a step back, take a breather, and let's just let the text speak for itself, because, as you said earlier, it's the foundation of the entire Bible. So if it's a faulty foundation, and we know now that that's why the devil's attacking it, then the whole thing crumbles. Yeah.
And it's interesting to me that I find it interesting that when you bring up another theory, like, why are people so incredibly against it? It's like, why wouldn't you just have an open mind and going, well, you know what, let's look into the Bible. Let's really read it, rather than really holding on to everything that you've been taught. Because I would say most people, in their Christian journey, one by one, things start changing as far as things that they knew or they understood. Like, I'm like you in a way that I really learned a lot. I got to meet Hovind at church, many, many years ago. But I mean, he was very influential, like breaking down all the lies of evolution. And not only that, it gave me the courage to basically stand up or debate with an atheist or whatever. I mean, here I am bringing up, certain things and bringing up the Bible and showing how things can't work. But before that, and actually, if you actually do a study, you will find that the church was really going in a direction where they were holding on to evolution. It wasn't obviously just Catholicism, the Pope saying, evolution is the way it was. But you saw this happening. But it wasn't until the great creation ministries, like Answers in Genesis, and you're getting into all these different, creation ministries, that they provided the materials, and one by one, most people started dropping and going, yeah, that's absurd. But they were, if you actually look back in time, they were kind of tottering. They were like, well, but science says this, right? And it's okay because I can keep my faith. Nothing changes, right? And they kept encouraging him, saying, listen, it's okay. You can believe in evolution. God just did it through evolution. You're like, yeah, okay. It was safe. I mean, there was nothing that was going to rock your faith. It wasn't going to rock your foundation. It wasn't going to do anything. So then it became safe. But I noticed that there was a lot of people, that were starting to come over. And because the resources were there, people were starting to just take this one area of the Bible, because there's so many different areas of study, and they were going, we're going to focus on creation. Just like, some people are coming out now and they're focusing on enclosed creationism or even this flat earth research. But again, in that, they started this research and they started bringing up all these things, and they started getting other people in there looking at it and saying, well, we're really highly suspicious. So let's start looking in, let's start talking to scientists that really, are maybe not afraid to come out, because you find out the reality is there is a lot of scientists around that are scared to come out publicly because they're going to lose, their credibility. They're going to be kicked out of journals. They're going to, their livelihood is going to be threatened. But they actually secretly believe, say, in geocentrism, or they don't believe in, evolution, because they're saying the science, it's not scientifically backed up. It's a theory, but I cannot put the stamp on it saying it's scientifically proven. It's not, right? So that's going on, but it's almost like the Darwin Club. It's like if you don't go with the whole Darwinism, it's like you're looked as an outsider and you're booted out. So this whole mindset, again, I look at it like, 2015 for the majority of us, for whatever reason, there's this huge kind of awakening in this research going, whoa, wait a minute, what if everything that, I was taught about the Big Bang heliocentric universe was off? And you start looking in the Bible. But I look at it like we're in the infancy stage. Like we're at the stage now where we're going out there, we're getting beat up, we're going through all this stuff. But there's going to be a huge reward, because more and more people every day are starting to look at it. They're saying, I don't care. This is what the Bible says. And the beautiful thing about it was just like the creation ministries, the way I look at it. It wasn't just the Bible said it, and you start digging deep, and you're like, well, the Bible says it. You also are getting all these experiments, and you're applying the scientific method to confirm it. So it's being confirmed twice. It's not just, well, by faith, I'm going to read the Bible, believe it. It's being actually confirmed through true scientific experimentation, not just scientific theory. So I find that really good. It's almost like a way of kind of giving you that extra level of confidence. Because if, for example, the creation ministry just did a presentation and they said, evolution's garbage. It's garbage. The Bible says, it's not true. And that was it. It'd be one thing, but what they were doing is they were showing you sediment layers. They were showing you Grand Canyons. They were showing you different ways of looking at, tree layers. And they were breaking it down with other scientific perspectives. And that gave you a lot of confidence, because you weren't just taking it on faith. You were taking it on the proofs right there. And they're hiding it. They're hiding, discoveries. They're mixing bones. They're finding like a little wee bone, and they're constructing an entire animal, It's ridiculous, right? So when these things start coming out, you start getting confidence, saying, wait a minute, people are covering things up. The science is not pointing to this theory at all. If anything, they're embarrassed. They have to actually start, fabricating stuff, just like they had to, even with like climate change right now, they got to, fudge the numbers because the numbers aren't working for their agenda. So you find that in the scientific or mainstream community, they want it to go a certain direction. And when the numbers don't jive, you can see this time and time again, whether it's evolution or climate change or even cosmology. Wait a minute, we can't figure this out. It's not going. The Big Bang is kind of getting messed up now. Well, let's create dark matter. We don't know what it is. Well, let's just create it. Hey, and by the way, we can see black holes, 10 billion light years away, and also like 2 billion years ago. I mean, how do you see things in the past or hear things in the past? But yet this is what mainstream science are telling us, and we're all applauding and going, wow, you guys are smart. Amazing. We're amazing as humans. Look at the technology. Look how amazing we are. Maybe one day we're going to fly around the universe and we're going to meet other beings. It's this whole sci-fi, technological, fantasy, and also the whole idea of merging with technology to become perfect, to live forever. All these things are all merging, and science is one major driving force. I can see it in every single different area of science. Yeah,
absolutely. I was just looking at something somebody was saying here. Man, it is. There's a book. Have you ever heard of Kings Dethroned?
No, I actually haven't.
Gerard Hickson. You need to get it. And anybody interested in this subject of scientism needs to get it. Now, this guy, at least as far as I can tell, is not a flat earther. It's written in 1922. But he was very much a geocentrist. And he was just pointing out the absurdity of the science of his day and the way that they were calculating the distances to the moon or to the sun, or the assumptions that they were having to make in order to come up with the numbers that they came up with. I mean, he totally obliterates all of it, is saying, because of this, the results are rendered nil. And he was living at the time when Einstein had just published his general theory of relativity and all that, and he just shreds it. I just got this book a couple of days ago, and I've been about halfway through it right now, reading it. But what has struck me is looking at where science started to derail and go the path that it's on right now, that to the point where Tesla said in his day that scientists now are basically, chalkboard warriors. They just, they're wandering off into equation after equation until they come up with something that has no basis in reality. Is the book Terra Firma by David Wardlaw Scott was the first one that really caught my attention. And that's written in 1901. And, of course, he's referencing zetetic astronomy and 100 Proofs Earth's Not a Globe all through his book. So that led me to reading Dr. Samuel Robidom's stuff as well as William Carpenter's stuff. And these guys were at the end of the 19th century, going into the beginning of the 20th century, many of them men of God, taking a stand on what the scriptures said and saying, look, guys, what is being passed off as science today is about as far away from true science as you can possibly get. And, they were living, I would say, in the time when scientism was just being birthed. It just, exited the womb and was starting to, its process of growth, and giving us warnings about where we're headed and where we are today. Right now,
No hate, no hype, no fear. We are EFR, your protection from deception.
We're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I am your host, Rob Skiba, and I'm talking this evening with my guest, Robbie Davidson. And right before the break, I was talking about the book Kings Dethroned and several other books that were written at the end of the 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s, where there were various, in some cases, men of God. In other cases, they were just scientists, real scientists, looking at what is being passed off as science in their day and just shaking their heads going, this is not science. And again, I can't recommend this book highly enough. I just got it. It's called Kings Dethroned by Gerard Hickson, and it's published in 1922. And, I mean, he goes through the Michelson-Morley test, and for him, he's writing in 1922. These tests were done in, 1887. So, really contemporary to, the time that he lived in. And in Chapter 12, on the theory of relativity, he addresses Einstein. He says, the theory of relativity is so complicated that when it first came to the public notice, it was said that there were probably not more than 12 people in the whole world capable of understanding it. He goes on to say, but let's just let Professor Einstein himself tell us what he means by relativity in the words that he used in the opening of his address at Princeton University, United States. He quotes Einstein saying, what we mean by relative motion, in a general sense, is perfectly plain to everyone. If we think of a wagon moving along a street, we know that it is possible to speak of the wagon at rest and the street in motion, just as well as it is to speak of the wagon in motion and the street at rest. That, however, is a very special part of the ideas involved in the principle of relativity, end quote. And so this author goes, well, that would be amusing if we read it in a comic book paper or if Mutt and Jeff had said it. But when Professor Einstein says it in a lecture at a Princeton University, we are expected not to laugh. That's the only difference. It is silly, but I may not dismiss the matter with that remark, and so I will answer quite seriously that it is only possible for me to speak of the street moving while the wagon remains still, and to believe it, when I cast away all the experience of a lifetime and am no longer able to understand the evidence of my senses, which is insanity. Such self-deception as this is not reasoning. It is the negation of reason, which is the faculty of forming correct conclusions from things observed, judged by the light of experience. It is unworthy of our intelligence and a waste of our greatest gift. But that introduction serves very well to illustrate the kind of illusion that lies at the root of relativity. And he goes on and just starts shredding it, But, Einstein's opening statement is like, okay, it's just as easy for us to imagine that it is the ground that's at rest and the wagon's moving as it is to say that the wagon's still and the ground is moving. He's like, after reading a comic book, but I mean, it just impressed me that these were the guys, the watchmen on the wall in the late 1800s and 1900s, sounding the alarm saying, hey guys, we're in for a world of trouble if we don't head this train off at the pass, like now. And sadly, Christians, I think, are largely to blame because, as you said in the previous segment, so many of us, even from the pulpit, have in various ways capitulated to scientism.
It's very true. It's very true. And I think, honestly, scientism is like one of the biggest Trojan horses. And again, when you start looking at the actual power, you can actually see how it's all culminating. And I mean, if anyone's actually even seen the train wreck show, Bill Nye Saves the World, the title should actually shock you how, blasphemous that is. But when you get into it, what you find is very intriguing how they're merging, transgenderism with scientific discovery. Now, there's no facts brought up. They're just like, in science, we're discovering now that, that is scientific, and that we aren't just male and female. Sorry?
That gender's fluid.
Correct. But what I'm saying is you're seeing now, because science is becoming, and has been for a long time, but now they're able to kind of justify anything. So it's not just in cosmology. Now they're moving into perversions. They're moving into things that the Bible clearly says are not part of the official order and, right in the eyes of God. But again, the world is going that way. And then science comes along and, hey, there you go. I mean, it will go that much quicker when all of a sudden you have a bunch of scientists saying, sorry, guys, it's fact. We just did a gene test. It's true, So that's what I find this is so horrifying and so important of a topic is because scientism is disguised as like a true discovery. And I think way back where a lot of Christians or the church got confused is we believe that science was quest to glorify God's creation, to like understand it, to dissect it, to give praise and glory to him and stuff. And maybe way back, maybe there was some intentions there. But if you look at all the great pivotal changes and all the great men, when you start looking into them, you see mystery schools, you see all sorts of line of different type of, alchemy and different areas that are coming into it. And again, you're looking at like, big paradigm shifts like, Copernicus. Well, I mean, or you get into, Aristotle. You can go far back on this. And I mean, again, the question is, when did this all start going? What was the plan? I'm not sure. But again, if you start looking at it very, very clearly, you see how it's all coming together. And scientism can basically justify anything based on the fact, well, it's scientific. It's proven. I mean, if evolution is proven, it's scientifically true, and people will believe that, then they can say it about anything they want to push, anything they want to. Now they can actually go so far as to say, we're seeing with the evolutionary process that there's a bunch that are holding, the evolution to the next phase, back. We got to kind of eradicate them. This gets into like eugenics, different things like this. But they're going to move with scientism. It's going to become more and more spiritual. And you're going to see that as my research and as I'm seeing it. And when scientism exposed, as it progresses with 1, 2, and 3, I'll be getting in deeper and deeper into the subject matter, but also the spirituality and the agenda behind it. Because again, this is not just science. It never truly was. It always had an agenda because it's secular. It's not of God. So anything that's secular, you have to actually, just anybody, any Christian or the church has to recognize, well, it can't be to glorify God. It's secular, right? It's of the world. And what does the Bible say about the world's wisdom? It's foolishness to God. He laughs at it. He says it's ridiculous. And he probably weeps that so many people will cling to it and say, I came from a rock, rather than just say, I was created special and unique. But again, more and more, when you start saying that you're on a spinning ball flying through space and 10 trillion galaxies, and you come from monkeys and this, and then you wonder why people run around acting like animals, no self-esteem, the suicide rates are off the charts, all these sort of things. But science is pounded in to every child when they're going to school. So over and over and over, you're being told, you really are a speck of dust. You're insignificant. You're nothing. So I think it's a very brilliant way to start just tearing down someone, because when you start tearing down that fabric, you can start putting in different things into a person. It's almost like, the ideas in New Age when you want to, empty yourself so another spirit can enter you. It's almost in a way that once you kind of got beaten down, you're susceptible to pretty much anything. And again, these are the ones that kind of instrumentally brought you up, in your construct with your entire worldview, and you can't argue with them. They have the PhDs. They're smart dudes, right? So you got to just trust them. But again, they have an agenda. Satan has been working with them for a long time. If you stop and think about it, and you think that these guys are just good, decent guys walking around, I mean, the Bible's clear. It's very clear. And one of the biggest lies that you hear all the time is, we're all God's children. The Bible's very clear that we are not. We are all God's creation, but we are not all God's children. And the Bible's clear that it says you could be sons or daughters of God, or you could be sons and daughters of the devil. So the question is, if they're truly not adopted and they're not part of the family of God, what does the Bible say about all these people? It says they can be used at will with Satan, spirits, whatever. They're susceptible. So that goes for all these scientists. Now, you get into the whole idea of Christian scientists. What do we do with that? And I think it's very, very simple. I think Christian scientists are just learning based on what they learned and what they learned, because it never rocked their Bible. It never tore away that. It just was like, I'm just glorifying God. He created all this. Wow. And they just look up in the sky and they try to understand it. But there's no ill intent there. So you can be fine. For example, like I run into a lot of brothers and sisters in Christ, and I don't divide over this issue. I don't fully understand how they can't see certain things sometimes. But again, they're still part of the family. They're still looking at certain things. And I don't think they're trying to do a disservice. They're trying to be evil. They're trying not to, they're resisting looking into enclosed cosmology. I just think that they're basically like, this is so long they've been glorifying God this way. They've been looking up the universe and going, wow, and I did it years ago. I remember I was with a friend, and we went way out in the country, and we just sat there and we watched some like NASA show, and it just showed billions and trillions of galaxies. And we were just like, whoa, like it's so big. We couldn't even comprehend it. So in a way, we were, magnifying in that way. But the interesting part, and I say that, is the construct that when you open the science textbook, you're going to find their Big Bang. And it's in complete contradiction to the Word of God as far as the order, as far as the size, as far as everything that you can kind of pick apart. So then you're kind of like, well, then I have to start from basics. I got to go back to the Bible. I have to go back from Genesis. And like you said, you got stuck on the firmament. That's where it hit me as well, too. I'm like, wait a minute. That everything changed right there. And it's weird, how many times you and I looking through the Bible just pass by that, just carry on talking, never, stopped and thought about it. But the minute you actually really stop and you look at the firmament and you start understanding, being put in, and you start looking at all these verses, you're kind of like, wait a minute. But for me, it was the biggest thing when I just started reading. I'm like, it's on pillars. It doesn't move. It's unmovable. And I'm like, well, they're like, that's figurative. That's figurative. I'm like, yeah, but why is it over and over and over and over again? Is God trying to confuse us? You get into Joshua, it'd be amazing for those guys to learn. He basically downloads right into them, says, I'm going to blow your minds, guys. This thing's spinning and flying through the universe. He could have done it. Like people think like, oh, they wouldn't be ready for that. They'd have a heart attack. They wouldn't be able to comprehend that. It's like, why wouldn't they? They would just take it in faith and saying, the Lord has told us so, that we're on a ball and we're flying around, the heavens or whatever. It's so easy, but it's not mentioned anywhere. And I tell people all the time, if you can find me one verse, even poetically, that says the earth soars like an eagle through the heavens, it would be over. It would be over. Even if the flat earthers came out and said, well, that's poetic, even if they wanted to reverse it, I'd say, yeah, but here we go. We've got one verse here that actually completely states that the earth flies through the heavens like an eagle.
Yeah.
Even if it's poetry, it's still conveying something. So even when you look at the poetic verses, it's still conveying that the sun is doing something. It's joyful. It's running out. It's got a gender to it. I mean, so these are the type of things that we can't get around. And if you want to start breaking that down, well, then why is it so absurd to, believe in evolution and these type of things? But it just seems like this one area, to me, is one area that just hasn't been touched forever. And for whatever reason, God's waking up a few, and they're kind of on the front lines, like you said, watchmen on the wall, and we'll see what happens over the next 10, 20 years. But I just think it's very new, and it takes a while to kind of saturate because it's been going on for so long. It's almost like God's like, okay, I'm now going to reveal it. Satan's had his opportunity to try to twist it. Satan cannot change reality. All he can do is try to convince people of his reality, right? But he can't change it. If it's a plane, he can't bend it. He can tell people they thought they saw a curve, or he could show pictures, but he can't actually bend God's creation. So what I'm saying is God probably is trying to basically, near the end, for whatever reason, he's now starting to reveal it because he's saying you only have a short time. I don't believe that God would ever allow Satan to distort his creation forever. It might be for a time, just like he's on a leash, he has his time. His time is short. We always see these references. So maybe in this topic, he's had his time, and even though one by one the evolution thing came out, people were still grappling on that, even when they saw the evidence. Now this is the next phase. What's going to be the next phase after that? I have a hard time believing that, I think for myself, this is probably the biggest lie, deception. I can't think of anything bigger, and I know you probably can't either. Most of us can't. But what if there's something even bigger than this? It's going to rock our minds. But maybe this is kind of like on a stairway, and we're now on the next phase of revealing his creation, and yet the creation still wouldn't turn to him. And then he goes to the next one. I don't know, but all I'm saying is it's very intriguing to me that so many people are starting just to wake up. And again, these aren't even just Christians. These aren't even of the church. These are other people that are starting to go, wait a minute. Now, again, you can believe in a creator, and that's a great thing. But the question is, who is the true creator? And the Bible, I said this on a show the other day, I said the most profound thing, Muhammad never claimed to be the creator of all that exists, the sun, moon, stars, everything that we see. Buddha never claimed it. Nobody. But again, you have Jesus, the Messiah, sitting there saying, all things were created. It's right there in the word. Now, you can disagree. You can agree with it. But here you have him not only claiming all these things, but he actually claims he's the creator, which I find is amazing. So, what's the creator's name? These are the questions that I think the community as a whole that are still at a point where they've come from an agnostic, they come from an atheistic to an agnostic, or now they believe in a creator. The question is, who is the creator? Who is, what's the creator's name? Stuff like this. But they kind of look at these things and go to that next level because, again, the true creator, whoever created the world, is now revealing it slowly. And I believe evolution was one of the first cracks in the thing. It was like, are you sure? Right? Science is faulty, right? Now he's opening up even more, giving more evidence saying, whoa, science is really lying. Can you not wake up? Okay, I'm going to throw one last one. Maybe this is the last one. Maybe we're really close for the last deception and all that. But what I'm saying is, if you look back in time, even before evolution, there was other things that he was trying to reveal, to say, look, it says very clearly that from creation, that I exist. But it's been scientism, and it's been other religions and other things that have distorted it, have made it so it's been not easy to see. But scientism is the most deadly because, again, it hasn't masqueraded itself as a belief or a religion. It's masqueraded as truth, fact, reality. This is where the world needs to go. And they're giving all the answers for humanity. And again, they're talking now that they need to be off the planet in 100 years because we're all going extinct.
Yeah. Do you think you mentioned earlier, and I agree that this globular Earth model is very likely, if not the Great Deception, a huge part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that this is all being, people are awakening to this reality at this time because there's an event coming in the near future, like an alien disclosure kind of thing? I mean, do you see what the Vatican's doing and what other organizations are doing, sort of trying to prepare the way for something like that?
Oh, absolutely. And I believe that he would wake people up across the board. It wouldn't be just, his chosen, his church, or, I'm not even saying that. I'm saying across the board, he's making it very clear for people to see. And he's like, if they would only turn to me, repent, these type of things, but they wouldn't, right? Now, when it comes to Christians, for example, you and I, if we had died like 4 years ago, we'd be fine, right? We still believed in a globular Earth. So what I'm saying is it's not a salvational term. But again, I can't think of anything other than this topic that has brought so many people, not turn them away from the Bible in the sense that before there were other choices. You could choose the Bible, you could choose this religion, you could choose this. But it's made the Bible absurd. It's made the Bible silly. It's made it prehistoric and a bunch of fables. And again, this is the most destructive thing. It's not an opposing viewpoint. is actually looking at it and saying, oh boy, they had it totally wrong. They didn't understand anything. So therefore, you can't take anything in the Bible credible because they can't even get the world right. They can't get anything right. These guys were primitive in their understanding. They were cavemen or whatever. So that's what I'm saying. We're dealing with a different situation, but absolutely, we're moving towards something that they need this construct. I tell people all the time, I said, I do not believe that flat Earth or whatever, or like the globe Earth or the Big Bang heliocentric universe is the great deception. Like, oh, if you believe in that, you're in big trouble. Not that. But you will believe it so much easier when you have that construct, because scientism, it overlaps every single world religion. Everyone talks about all the religions coming together as one and stuff, but it might actually be branched over with scientism. So, for example, you have all the religions, but all the religions looked at all their gods and all that stuff. They created planets. I mean, if you look at every religion, they would all agree they have different planets, they have people, the gods, they got this, but it's inside that construct. So if you actually start tearing scientism out, now all these different religions all have major problems and stuff because they had like deities, they had all sorts of, Maitreya, and you've got so I think it's all kind of in there, and science is all bringing it together with scientism. And yeah, of course, the Pope, I mean, he's getting more and more bold with not just to mention that they're all ready to baptize aliens when contact is made. I mean, they're publicly saying this. This isn't conspiracy theory central. This is the Pope addressing and saying, we can't wait to baptize, alien life forms. Wow, let us be the first to baptize them into the Church of Rome. This is crazy stuff, right? You got them with the most powerful telescopes. What are they looking at? I mean, what is the fascination with having these? And then again, you get into Lucifer, the name of their telescope. I mean, you can't even write this stuff. People would think you're crazy if you said the Catholic Church have a telescope. It's the biggest one in the world, and yet it's called Lucifer. They'd be like, get out of here, come on. And you look it up yourself. I mean, this stuff is sometimes right in our face, and you're kind of like, how come people can't see this? But the Bible clearly says that a lot of the world is blinded, by the God of this age, by the God of this world, So we're dealing with a spiritual thing. I tell people all the time, this isn't, you could wake up to every truth. I mean, God could probably come down and show everything. He could just take everything apart and just show you creation, everything like this. Most people still won't turn to him because it's not an intellectual thing. It's a hard thing. It's a spiritual war we're in. And I say, this is not an intellectual battle. This is a spiritual battle. And these guys are being influenced by Satan to basically do their work, but also to prepare the world for what's to come, to prepare them for the Antichrist, to prepare them for the New World Order, to prepare them for all these sort of things. But anyone that's not kind of part of that system, they got to be kind of taken care of. They got to be, they're holding us back. And again, that's where this whole evolution scientism gets really deadly, because now they're going to be, and it's already in New Age circles, the evolution spiritually that we must do, right? We must progress in our evolution spiritually. So we're at a point right now where we're kind of hindered. And hey, if all of a sudden an alien life form came down and told us, like, you guys are a bit in trouble, you guys can, elevate yourself to godhood almost. You just have to get rid of the stuff that's hindering you back. You've got a lot of prehistoric thinking here. You got to get, all in one wavelength. We got to get rid of these people that are posing and going against the grain. So I believe there's a bloodbath coming. I believe that there is definitely a lot of persecution coming. And we're going to see it. And again, I just continue to keep people in prayers, especially my brothers and sisters in Christ, because I definitely know this isn't a salvational issue. But again, it's something that is important, just like other areas, and we just need to have that understanding. But I think we get into danger if we ever get to a point where we do make this salvational, because again, that's how the devil could probably corrupt it for us, is when he gets us to a point where we're just like, yeah, don't think that person's saved because they believe in a globe. I think it's going to get very dangerous if people start taking that turn. I think we need to kind of keep everything into perspective. We need to kind of see the bigger picture and kind of go with that. But I believe, scientism is incredibly, incredibly sophisticated. It's a Trojan horse. It's something that there's nothing else like it in the world. And as you continue, each year passes by, you see who the authorities are. They're NASA scientists, and they're biological scientists, and they're, cosmological scientists. And these guys are basically the wisdom of the world. These are the kind of the seers. These are basically the people that have been set up as basically follow our way. The Bible's very, very clear. You see it all through Old Testament, New Testament. And again, it is warned about, and yet everyone's following it because they believe it's the pursuit of truth, science. It's reality. I mean, they could do you no wrong, but yet it is very spiritual and it's very deadly. And I hope with the investigation that a lot of people are doing, including yourself, Rob, that we start breaking down really deep levels of it, because when we start uncovering that, for a lot of Christians, they'll be like, yeah, that's kind of dicey. That big discovery, and then you find out it was, if we can actually start unlocking those things, I think a lot more, of the family of God will actually start kind of going, wait a minute, man, just like me. I was on my knees in tears, and I said, Lord, forgive me. Forgive me for just not being able to read, your word for what it was, And again, I knew that I was okay. I was secured. I was saved. But I was just like, wow, it was right there all along. And yet scientism has blinded me so much where I'm just like, well, those aren't relevant. I don't need to, that's not important because I don't get pillars, or I don't get, the whole idea that it's fixed. That must mean that he fixes his authority on the earth. That must be poetic. And I got into that danger. Yet when it worked for me, I would take that literal. No, that's literal. God created it. Yep, 6 days. Yep, he created it. Instant. It wasn't over evolution. It was instant because the Bible says it. So you're flip-flopping. And I think that's the danger point, is a lot of these people, it's like, and a lot of the people that come against me and you and other people like that, they'll just staunchly defend the fact that evolution is a lie, there's a cover-up, there's a conspiracy theory, there's all sorts of stuff, and yet you just bring out one other little aspect in cosmology or anything. Oh, no, you create NASA. NASA proved it. There's Christian astronauts.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I love Kent Hovind, and guys like him, we mentioned earlier, have had tremendous influence on our lives, and positive ways, and in helping us to hold to the Bible, cling to the Bible as our source for truth, and standing on it that it is true, and demolishing, the lies of the textbooks. But it's like they show us how much they've lied to us about biology. They show us how much they've lied to us about geology. They show us about how much they've lied to us about archaeology, and pick your ology until you get to cosmology, and then all of a sudden they're giving them a pass. It's like, wait a minute, you've established a long line of, let's say, a certain type of behavior of dishonesty within the science community in general. And why are you all of a sudden giving this one category, this one ology, a pass?
Mm-hmm. No, I'm right with you.
That astounds me.
It does. It really does. But you start even looking into the origins of NASA. You start looking into their mission statement. Everything about it is polar opposite. It is the pursuit of anything anti-biblical. And yet for Christians to just hold on to it and say, no, they're really good. They're trying to look at the universe. And it's like, I don't know. But again, I think we're dealing with a mindset, not with everyone. But again, we have almost a different mindset in the sense that we kind of look at how kind of Satan operates in this world. There's a lot of Christians that go around and they worship, they do wonderful things, they feed the poor, they have a godly lifestyle, everything like this, but they don't really care to look at like how, satanic ritual abuse is going on. They cringe at the idea. They don't want to look at it. They probably know maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't, but I don't need to see it. Well, there's other people that are kind of like, I want to see. It's hard to look at. But it's like, wow, is this a sick and depraved world, right? So I don't know if it's a personality thing. I don't know if it's a mindset. I don't know if it's kind of like we're all different parts of the body. And it's kind of like the elbow is looking at the knee and saying, dude, you're bending wrong. Dude, you're bending wrong. It's like, and they're talking back and forth like, dude, like, you're not doing it right. Well, an elbow, is different than a knee sort of thing. So I look at it sometimes like we almost have to get to a point where we kind of respect different people that are doing different things in the body of Christ. It's frustrating, I know, because you're kind of like, come on, because I'm passionate about this. I want other people to be passionate about, but maybe they're passionate about another form of ministry. Or I'll go even further to say that God's called them to something. And it's like, he doesn't want them to be distracted. And it sounds, sometimes people will say, don't be distracted. The gospel is the most important. But all of these things are coming back to the gospel. Everyone that I know that are Christian flat earthers or anyone that's in this community have a very strong heart for the gospel. They have a heart for the lost. That, again, I think it's one of the biggest disses that someone can get. How do you come back from that when someone says, you know what I mean? You didn't preach the gospel. But, you start with excuses and you start to defend yourself. But it's almost like these are like the lowest form. They have no more discussion with you. They start attacking either you as a person, like a personal attack, or your Christianity. You're not very Christian. It's like, what do you say to that, right? Like, it just upsets people because it's like, what do you say to that? But it's almost like, it's like a childish fight. It's just like, you get all mad at each other and you're like, yeah, whatever. How Christian is that? I don't even believe you're Christian. It's like, so I think it's kind of the same way that we look at that in there, and it can be frustrating. And I think we need to talk to those that are listening, because there's so many people that are listening, that are waking up to this. And we need to continue to pray that God will lead the people that he wants to be led to us, and that we will preach his good word to them.
Amen. All right, we'll come back and talk some more after the break.
You are now tuned into the truth frequency.
Your protection from deception. This is Truth Frequency Radio.
We're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I am your host, Rob Skiba. For the second hour of the broadcast, I'm talking with my guest, Robbie Davidson. And right before the break, we were talking about, well, scientism and this whole issue of should we take the Bible literally or not, or is it all poetic? And, one of the things that struck me about the whole poetic argument, it's using metaphors and, it's using poetic language. It's like, well, if you're going to use a metaphor, doesn't it make sense to use a metaphor that would at least in some fashion paint an image in the mind of your listener that at least remotely resembles whatever it is you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I go back to children. And I mean, sometimes people will look at it as elementary, but again, the Bible, you can go very, very deep, but on the surface level, there's things that are very, you can't make it much more clear that when it comes to like the 10 Commandments. I mean, there's nothing, you can go deep into the subject matter, but again, they're there, right? I mean, it's just, do not lie, thou shalt not lie, right? It's just clear. There's no poetic language. It's like, it's not right, don't do it. So when I'm looking at a lot of these verses, to me, it's unfair to construct, for a child to read that. And basically, if they were to basically draw a picture based on what they were listening to or what they were reading, to construct that and to be like, haha, you're so far off, you had no clue. When science fully discovered it and basically said it, and yet God would not reveal that right from day one. I mean, God would have the praise on showing what true creation was like. It wouldn't be scientism that would discover to teach the world what they found through technology. And I find that very intriguing. It's through technology and through the religion of scientism that are teaching the world God's creation, but yet they're deceiving everyone. It would be God right from day one saying, I'm going to explain it to you. There's certain things I don't need to explain. You don't need to know. But I'm going to explain certain things. This is how the world came together, right? It's there. So you can say, wow, it's poetry, it's this other thing, but you're doing a disservice when it's so clear, and he would be so direct and just lay it out, and it's the sun, moon, and stars are created after the earth, right? You got even major problems, and this might throw other people for a twist, but when it comes down to the fact that there was herb life before the sun was even created, well, how's that possible, right? Science will completely laugh that right out. But again, here it says it. It also says that light existed before the sun. Go figure that one out. I don't think we can. And I don't think we're ever going to, which is fine because we take God at his word and say, you said it, therefore I believe it. I don't need to question it. And forgive me for even trying to actually have people whispering in my ear to start questioning your word, Lord. I'm going to take it for fact. And that's it. So this is such a simple argument. We can just go one by one. And at what point does it derail? Is it NASA? Is it because of the moon landing? So then we're dealing with a whole other situation. We're dealing with a massive deception that was so grand that it actually wiped anything out from the Bible. Because if they never landed on the moon, we had no pictures of the earth, we're still back, then maybe we could have these discussions with people. They're like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, maybe the earth was not moving. No, but once they got up there and they started like showing stuff, even though that footage is just absolutely horrible and you can rip that apart, then it was always dismissed. Anything to do with cosmology will be dismissed because NASA, or space, I should just say space agencies, have told us, showing us pictures, video, Christian astronauts have gone up.
Right.
End of discussion. End of discussion. Just like science saying there's no debate, the science is settled. NASA or space settled it. So the whole idea of getting up there, and you find verses in the Bible where it says, I've given dominion dominion for man of the earth, but of the heaven it is not of. I forget the verse offhand, but basically it says dominion is given, on earth to man, not the heavens. That's the Lord's. I think it's on Isaiah. It's really, really startling verse because it clearly just says that's not your dominion. You shouldn't even be up there. And again, if you're up there, you're probably up to no good, right? So what's going on? Because again, there's one verse very clear. He says, I didn't give it to you. I gave you the earth, and like not not the heavens kind of thing. So again, I think that there's a lot of deviousness going on. You look at Satan; he wanted to ascend above the stars. Ascend to be like the most high. You see all these verses, and yet you have to conspire, whether you look at NASA as to lift or to deceive. Either way, here's this aspiration to get beyond the stars. Notice that their aspirations to get way beyond what we can even physically see. That's their pursuit, is to go off to Mars. But again, reading the Bible, any commandment or anything where the Lord looks at it and says, yes, well done, servants, I want you to go beyond the stars. No, if anything, he looks down on it and says, stay away from that area. That's not your dominion. Your dominion is the earth and what I've given you. And to me, should just be the open and shut case and the scenario. Because again, if all of a sudden we're told not to do something and we choose to go against that, thing, then what are we going to do, right? We're going to be up to no good. We're rebellious. We're probably, going to get into trouble. So I'm looking at the entire space program as something they shouldn't even be dealing with. Again, because the Bible is very, very clear in that one verse. Now, you could say, it's poetic, it's whatever. But again, it's pretty clear. I've given you dominion here, not here. So again, if I'm reading that straight, then I shouldn't be up there. And maybe there's a reason, because he also knew they would go against that, and then they would start, telling all their fables. Another really incredible verse is, I think it's Timothy, where it says they would turn from the truth and start believing fables, right? And I think I probably used that verse on Scientism Exposed too. I obviously used Science Falsely So-Called for the first one, but I'll probably use that one because, again, people are turning to fables, black holes, and all these dark matter, and they're turning to fables. They're turning to nonsense, and yet they're clinging on to more and more. It's going to get more and more absurd, and yet the world, and unfortunately, some Christians are clinging on to it as well. I mean, it must break God's heart when he sees this, but he has a lot of, patience. Everything's going to happen according to his will. And again, I believe that little by little, he is revealing the truth. All things kept in secret, will be revealed. And I think that we're on this kind of path that, different generations have revealed certain things, and we're at this one. I mean, there's no doubt about it. This is breaking open, and people are turning to the Bible. People are recognizing, wow, the whole world's lying. So the question is, if all of a sudden all these agencies, the government, and the scientists and everyone's lying, the question is why? And then that's the interesting question. Could there be a spiritual entity that is kind of puppeteering this whole thing? Now, a lot of people will think on a secular level, and they'll say, there's just some bad dudes and they're all together. Well, they would fight. They wouldn't even be able to get anything done unless it was orchestrated behind the scenes. So that's the intriguing thing. And most people looking into the research can clearly see that a lot of these guys are Luciferian. They're into the occult. They're into some pretty nasty stuff. So you put two and two together and you go, well, all the most richest and powerful and everyone that's got all the keys to this thing, are definitely, something really sinister is going on. They, whether I believe in the devil or not, these guys sure do. And well, then there must be a polar, opposite to that. So again, hopefully, people will wake up. You would think it would be so easy to do a bit of research. There it is. It's right in front of you. But again, it's spiritual. It says their eyes are blinded. It's God that kind of opens their eyes. It's Lucifer, the God of this world, that's, blinded them. So this is a spiritual battle, and it can be frustrating when you're like, here's all the evidence. And you're just like, what are you waiting for? Kind of thing. But it's a spiritual thing. But I think that God would do it across the board, what he would allow all of his creation to see it bit by bit. And again, they did at a point, and he allowed people to come in and muddy the waters. He's like, really? You would rather turn to idols? You would rather turn to fables? You would rather turn to nonsense, foolishness? Wow. And that's what you see over and over in the Bible. He allows his creation to turn to do despicable things, to worship idols, false gods, after he's done an amazing, look at the Israelites, they see the sea parted. I mean, to me, if I saw the Red Sea parted, whoa, I'm never turning my back. They're grumbling after a week, I'm going to worship a cow because where's God? He's gone. It's like, what kind of faith was this, right? So it's like, what would God need to do to actually get people 100% convinced and not turn their back? We see clearly in the Bible that's not the case. He could do a miracle as big as parting the Red Sea, and yet people are grumbling and turning away from him a week later, right? So this is something that I look at, that it can all be in there, and he can start revealing it. He can start showing people, and yet they're going to hold on to it. Unfortunately, that world's wisdom, be in the world but not of the world. fortunately, there's a lot of the church, a lot of Christians that are part of the world. They have been for a long time. And now it's almost like I said to a person the other day, I said, for the longest time as a Christian, you could be on the fence. You could kind of carry on one foot in the world, one foot in the church kind of thing. But we're moving into a time where you've got to take a stand, whether it's on a moral issue, whether it's on LGBT movement, or whether it's on, euthanasia or abortion, or you're getting into, evolution, scientism. You've got to take a stand. So if you're around a big table and everyone's like, evolution, of course, yeah, dinosaurs and fossil records, and they turn to you and they say, well, how long do you think it is? And you're like, 6,000? They all start laughing. And then you're like, oh, just kidding, it could be either way. And you just go on, you have your drink or whatever. You can't do that anymore. You're in a position now where you have to take a stand, and you're going to get that backlash. You're going to get that ridicule. You're going to get that persecution. It's going to come at you in a number of ways. So we're moving into a time where God's kind of getting us to a point in all areas, scientism, morality, where we've got to take a stand. And unfortunately, we're taking the stand on this issue, and I mean, we're seeing it. We're seeing people go absolutely insane. They're going psycho. What is going on? Like, what would it, like, you start thinking about it, you're like, really, at the end of the day, if I think it was a cube or a pyramid, or, why would you go nuts? You'd probably just think I'm a moron and walk away, but they're not. They're just like, dude, you seriously are heretical. You have to be expelled. We have to remove you. And I've heard some horrifying stories, Rob. And again, I never go out, and I know there's a lot of problems with the church. The church isn't perfect. But the church, the people, that's the bride of Christ. So I always be very careful the way I talk about the church, even with all of its blemishes, even with all of its inaccuracies and things that are going on. I still talk highly about it. But when I hear stories, it saddens me when all of a sudden people are being asked to leave or being kicked out of churches because of this topic. And yet when they're pleading and saying, please show me from the Bible where I'm in error, they're like, no, NASA and science has already deemed it. This is a whole new element. Churches, or, when things were happening in the past, were dealt with, whether it was, disciplinary, ways and stuff, was over sin, unrepented sin. You're cheating on your wife. You won't repent. Well, we got to do something. We have to discipline you. These type of scenarios. God disciplines us when we unrepent, we continue on in a sinful path. God will deal with us in a loving. I mean, that's what's beautiful about discipline versus abuse. Discipline is loving versus abuse, and the world looks at the two together, and that's a whole other discussion. But that's what I'm seeing constantly. But yet they're not defending it from the Bible. They're not opening the Bible and saying, see, right there's the one verse that says that everything exploded, or here's the heliocentric verse I'll show you. So, for example, if you're a geocentric and you're in a church that the entire church is heliocentric, and you come to them and say, I don't believe it anymore, and they say, you're wrong, you're going to have to leave, show me from the Bible where I'm wrong, and they can't, and they're still asking you to leave. We're dealing with a very, very sinister spiritual thing, because, as different churches, there's different types of things out there, but I'm sorry, this topic would just be like, you're kind of nuts if you don't believe it moves, but we do, and we just carry on. But the fact is that there's something going on to the point where they're like, red alert, we got a problem here. We got someone that's going against NASA or science, for that matter, which is crazy because it's the same people that would be talking and exposing Darwin, But yet there's something to do with the cosmology. There's something to do with this topic in general that Satan's had a big hold on for a long time. And even though Satan can work within the churches, there can be many godly people in there, but it's almost like we've got to keep working. We've got to work in love. I mean, that's the question is do we do it in our own strength? Do we ask, for God for his wisdom on how to deal with this? Because he's setting up certain people to be on the forefront of this, to be on that wall and to be warning. Just like those books that you talked about at the beginning of this program, these were guys that were calling out to the wilderness. We're in a time right now where we have a potential large audience. It could go very viral. It could, so this is something I take very seriously because there's a big responsibility. And again, it's God that basically convicted me to basically go into this. And I would imagine everything that you do, Rob, again, it's the same thing. You're not doing this, because you kind of want to do it. You felt you were called. This is your, ministry that you've been called to. So again, we have to take it serious. We have to stand on the word of God, and history will kind of show, down the road what went on. And maybe they'll look and say, these were really brave people that God called, and they stood up and they were attacked and their lives were just miserable. And again, I've been in all sorts. I could talk about green lizard man. I could talk about any conspiracy under the sun. And, I never had more problems than I had with this issue. And again, I could believe in, lizard men run the world, and people just kind of laugh, you're a conspiracy theorist. And, I operated in different churches or different groups of friends, and they always knew me as kind of that kind of guy. But this topic, it alienates, it severs families. It's something big is going on. And that's how I know something is bigger than what we know. And that's why we have to continue on, because we're doing this in love. Our intentions are good. We're not trying to purposely deceive people. We're saying, look, man, it's in the Bible, and it all culminates back to Genesis, like we talked about at the beginning of the program with the conference this next month. It's back to basics. It's the foundation. And when you rock those foundations, when you take out those pillars, it falls. And again, I believe that the cosmology, the creation, our origin story, the origins, how God did it, where we come from, why we were created. These are the biggest assaults that Satan does. And that's why evolution, that's why the Big Bang are so deadly, because they teach us our origins. And really the origin right now for most people is you came from nothing. Nothing became something, exploded, and created everything. And yet you want to hold to that fable, go right ahead. But that's absolutely lunacy, and it shows a depravity. It shows a mind that has been so clouded and darkened they can't reason anymore, because nobody, if they were completely awake, would believe that nothing becomes something, and nod their heads and say, yep, scientists told me that. That's the fact. And yet we're the ones that the whole world laughs at, because we believe that we're actually created in 6 literal days, So we're dealing with a very spiritual war. And again, I think that we're on this stage. I think evolution was kind of the first crack in the scientism Trojan horse. We're now on the second one, maybe the last one. I'm not going to say it's not, because it's pretty big. I can't think of anything bigger. But I always want to keep an open mind, thinking that God can surprise me yet. But I think that we're on the next stage of cracking the foundation, showing truly what's going on. And will people turn to me? Will they turn from their ways? Will they repent? Will they stop believing in fables and turn to the Word of God? Or are they going to keep clinging? And it's unbelievable to me how much patience the Lord has with people. It's unbelievable, but He does. He loves us. He loves His creation. He desires that nobody be lost, and He will pursue, and He will continue to do what He does in order to basically have His entire will be fulfilled.
Right on. And I'm sure you're going to be talking more about this at the conference. I'll be addressing similar things at the upcoming Back to the Future conference. And if you guys are interested in that, I know that the seats are limited, but I know he's still got openings. So if you want to check that out, you could go to BTTFC for Back to the Future Conference. It's just the initials, bttfc.com. And right there on the front page, you can get your tickets. It's going to be Robbie Davidson speaking. I'm speaking. John Pounders from Now You See TV and David Carrico, also from Now You See TV, are going to be there. I'm not sure what they're going to be talking about. That should be pretty exciting. I love listening to those guys. So definitely want to check that out. The conference is going to be in August 19th through the 20th. And so you're going to want to get your tickets for that. Now, for the remainder of the show, there's another much bigger conference to talk about that is happening in November that you're very much a part of. In fact, you're really the driving force behind it, aren't you?
Yes, correct. Yes.
And is Brian Mullen with you also on that? Or
yeah, he got like the story, and a lot of people, were kind of alerted in the fact that he kind of disappeared, and there was a lot of family things. They're actually expecting in December, so I think a month after the conference, they're having a baby. There's just a lot of family stuff going on right now. I just spoke with his wife the other day, and they were away with vacationing and seeing family throughout the summer. But yeah, he got really busy with family, with work. He definitely plans to still give his presentation. He's trying to. I'm going to know for sure if it's going to be possible, probably in the next week or two. But as far as everything that goes with that, he just basically had said at the point, he goes, look, there's just a ton of stuff going. Would you mind kind of just taking the ship and just and going full direction? If you need any support, we're kind of behind the scenes. So that's kind of where it's at now. But I'm definitely hoping and praying that he'll be able to deliver his presentation, because he was very excited about that, and he hasn't led me to believe that he is not going to be able to do that. But as far as the organizing, because there's so much work, and we'll get into how much stuff has been going on with this conference, because they're having a new baby and family and different things that are going on with work, he's getting really busy. He just didn't have the time to devote to it. So my wife and I have been taking a lot of the workload and just putting together best conference that we possibly can. Obviously, for a first year, it's exploding. There's a lot of logistics involved, but everything's coming together nicely, and excited for a lot of the news that's coming out.
Fantastic. And of course, we're talking about the Flat Earth Conference. It's the Flat Earth International Conference, actually, November 9th and 10th in Raleigh, North Carolina. Now, are tickets still available? I keep hearing that it's sold out, but I also hear that there's various forms of expansion that may be taking place. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I talked to a few individuals last couple of days, like Jared and Mark Sargent, and I just mentioned that it's a 99% chance that we're going to be able to get maybe 50 or 60 more tickets. Now it is sold out currently right now. We're working with the venue to change the seating arrangement to squeeze in as many as we can. So hopefully we'll have that confirmed by next week. It'll probably be like 50, 60 tickets, maybe a few more. I'm not sure, but at that point it will be at full capacity, which will be around 525. I think
Wow.
will be the total attendance on that. But the thing we also have, if you just can't get there, I mean, hold off. If you really want to go and you don't have a ticket yet or whatever, go to fe2017.com. Just as in Flat Earth, but yeah, fe2017.com. Go to tickets. At the bottom, there is a waiting list. Add yourself to that, because when they become available, we'll be able to release those and be able to get your ticket. But for anyone that can't or is not going to be able to be there, we have the early bird live stream, which is $17 for both days. Now, it is going to be fantastic as far as the experience. I wanted to make sure that anyone that couldn't attend the conference would have the next best thing. So we've got a 4-man production crew coming in that are doing a very professional production on the live stream. So it's not just a camera on a tripod and, hey, why am I paying for this? It's a very, very expensive ordeal. We feel keeping the prices low at $17 for both days is a great deal. It's going to be an awesome time. We've got some surprises for the live stream in there. And again, we're working pretty hard on getting everything together as well. We'll be announcing a couple surprise guests that we're going to be adding to the roster. That will be coming up shortly, so stay tuned for that announcement. But everything, like I said, is doing really well. Everything is blowing up as far as the media. Be prepared that there will be probably 2, possibly 3 documentary crews shooting at the event. So we'll have coverage on that even on the live stream as well. There's been influx, and it's building up as far as the media and press. Just to throw around a few names, and this is like Mark could attest to it. I mean, HBO's looking at, CNN's kind of been fishing around. There's some pretty big names. And again, I've been on the phone with a few individuals that want crews down, and we only have so many tickets for press. So again, it might have to start a waiting list for press and first come, first serve type of thing. So I don't want to get in a position where all of a sudden, they're all gone, and then all of a sudden some really good, amazing press would come forward, and we just can't. So we're in a situation where obviously we expanded. People are like, why did you get a bigger venue? Well, you have to understand that, again, if we had done a venue at, say, 250 and we only sold 100 tickets, well, we were responsible for the rest. It's pretty expensive, but we had it planned that we would go from 250, and then our next expansion would go to like 450. Now we're really trying to squeeze that last 50 to get it just over 500. But next year, and again, we will have even announcements for that, it will be a much larger venue now that we know the demand, now that we know exactly what's going on with this, the excitement. And I want to thank not just everyone in the community. You've been really amazing, but I'm talking about the presenters, Mark and Jaron and Patricia and yourself, Rob, and, ODD and all the wonderful people that have been involved, like the Morgal, Bob, all the people that have been involved. They've been so supportive, working together, even with different differences and ideas. We still understand that there is a bigger picture here. We're coming to do something that's very professional. It's historic. And again, a lot of eyes are going to be watching this, and we just want to represent well. So as far as organizing and behind the scenes, I want to make sure that it's something worthy of the people that are going to be part of the conference, the people that are coming, the stories, the friendship, the things that are going to happen over these couple of days in Raleigh, North Carolina, are going to be absolutely incredible. We have some surprises planned. We really want to make it probably one of the best conferences you've ever been to in your life, as something that we can move forward and just build it bigger and better each year. And don't worry if all of a sudden you felt it was too small, or what were you thinking? Again, we had to have a leap of faith. We had to basically have it at a certain point, because there was no guarantees that we were going to sell 200 tickets. We had no idea. But we will definitely be prepared to have a very, very large venue for next year. We'll have a different locale. and we're just going to keep building it. So, hopefully we can kind of do a great justice. And for anyone that wants to watch it live through the live stream, all I'm suggesting is get your tickets for the early bird. They're 17. After October, they're going to jump up to 27, I believe, for the 2 days. So you save some money right now. And again, if for whatever reason you can't, attend it, or you don't want it anymore, you can get a refund on that. It's not a problem. So I would just say it's a good idea if you want to save some money. But it's not like we're going to sell the live streams. We have the production team that are going to be able to handle a lot of people, and we want to deliver a first class presentation as far as the quality, as far as the stream itself. So I just didn't want to cut corners and put a camera on a tripod and different things like this. I want to make sure that, because there's a lot of people are going to be watching. We've got the uphill battle alone just looked at as we're kind of moronic and stupid people. At least we can be looked at as like, well, you can say what you want about them, but they're sure, doing this professional. They're doing this in a way that we maybe should take them a little bit serious and maybe look into what they're saying. They're not just a bunch of crazy people with tinfoil hats running around. So again, that's something that I kind of look at, and I want to make sure that everyone is properly represented and taken care of.
Yeah, right on. And just looking at the lineup, if you go to fe2017.com/featuring, you got the list of everybody there that's going to be speaking. Of course, I'm going to be speaking. ODD TV is going to be speaking. Patricia Steer, Mark Sargent, Jaron Campanella, Bob Nodell, Jonathan Christopoulos, who's the Morgile, Brian Mullen, you're going to be speaking. Emmanuel, how do you say his last name? Lakonga.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to that. I like his stuff too, the Controversy 7 channel. Richard Hopkins, love his stuff, Mr. Thrive and Survive. Amy Denise, got to meet her at a conference recently. Really cool, excited about hearing from her. And Carly, also. Carly Sunshine is her...
Yeah, Medrano. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, Carly Sunshine's like awesome. So, and again, like I mentioned, we are going to have 2 surprise guests that we're going to be adding. That's going to become really soon. I think everyone's going to be really excited with that. But I wanted to mention, I believe that Amy Denise is not coming now. So we are going to be putting someone else in her place, and there's nothing bad, or she hasn't gone globe or anything like that. But it's just, it just wouldn't work out. So we just so everyone does know that if they're actually coming and they're thinking that she's going to be there, she's not. But everyone else is great, and we're definitely looking forward to it. But get ready for the 2 surprise guests that we'll be adding soon.
That's exciting. So, yeah, lots to check out there, and about ready to go to break again, and we'll see what we have in store for the next segment. Should have some interesting conversation, I'm sure. Back next segment.
Real people, real radio. Wherever you are, make it TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
And we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I am your host, Rob Skiba, for the final half-hour segment of the broadcast. I'm talking with my guest, Robbie Davidson. And right before the break, we were talking about the various speakers that are going to be presenting at the probably first annual Flat Earth Conference.
Correct.
First annual. Looking at the lineup, I'm excited because there's a lot of different views represented there. People have different. I know, like the Morgile, he's an infinite plane guy, isn't he?
No, I don't think he's fully infinite plane, but he kind of looks at different theories, but I don't think he conclusively believes it. I've pretty much talked to every one of them on the phone at different times, and the one thing that I really like about this list or this community so far, understand there's differences. And,
Yeah.
some people, obviously don't, believe in the Bible, or they look in the infinite plane, or they look into the dome, but they understand the bigger picture. And they're like, you know what, it's useless fighting about these issues when there's
Yeah.
a world completely deceived. So again, for me, understanding, being the conference organizer, I wanted to make sure that there was no bias. It's not about personalities. It's not about beliefs. It's about, I want to bring people together that have different aspects. But again, at the end of the day, we're bringing all this together to basically say, look, we're exposing scientism, really, in a sense. So again, it doesn't matter where you're at in that spectrum, you're still showing the scientism has duped a lot of people, and again, how deadly it is, and so that's where the spiritual front comes in. That's where it comes into like the educational system, and there's going to be all these different facets. And I always say to people that, people will kind of, go to where they kind of feel at home. So, sometimes somebody will come out and it's like, oh my goodness, they're going to take down flat earth, or they're such a bad representative. And it's like, why do you have to worry about that? Because for example, myself, one of the first videos I saw was like Eric Dubay, right? And then Mark Sargent. But as time goes on, you start digesting a lot more. As you know, when you come to this thing, you can't stop watching for like a week or 2 weeks. You're just like nonstop. You're looking for every single thing you can find. So, but after a while, you kind of just resonate with kind of something, whether you're, spiritual, or whether you want to look into this, you want to look into that. So that's why I'm saying we don't need to be threatened. We need to kind of preach the truth. And again, that's exactly what will happen. But that's what I kind of really like, and that's what's important to me as far as even years, going forward. As long as people kind of see the bigger picture. But again, there's going to be no bias. And I've never ever said, just because I'm a Christian, this is not a Christian Flat Earth conference. This is a Flat Earth conference put on by a Christian organizer, So that's really important, that basically other ideas and things can be represented. But again, the opportunity is going to be there for people that really are hungry and that do want, because we are going to have a few tracks, based Flat Earth in the Bible, and you're going to be given your amazing hour and a half presentation as well, So you're going to have some good opportunity for people that really want to learn more. And I'm sure there'll be people that are curious. And I know a lot of people in the community, even with the names that are represented there, that even though they might have disagreements, you're, highly respected. They want to hear what you have to say, right? And it's kind of one of those things that might just kind of, hey, whatever he said there, that really meant a lot. So again, we don't know. Again, we're at the very beginning stages of this. Let's wait for 5 or 10 years being in this, and then we'll have some real big stories. We'll probably have some real big shockers that are still going to come out. And I believe that there's going to be some people that are going to come out of the woodwork, soon. And I'm talking pastors. Already, and I was going to mention this as well. That I think it's important to bring up as well. But I think it's been just over a week, but I created a Flat Earth in the Bible 24-hour live stream on my channel, which has been really fantastic. And I want to give big thanks to ODD, because early on when we were discussing it, I said at some point in the summer, I was thinking of doing it anyways. And he gave me some tips. And then even after I got it launched, he kind of gave me some more, suggestions and tips to kind of refine it. So I want to give a big thanks to him. But I thought it was really important. He was doing a fantastic job with his live stream. But again, there was a void that people wanted to know about things that are Bible. Somebody that's that they're specialized, when it comes down to the Bible, a Christian perspective, these type of things. So I created that, and it's been just over a week, and it's been absolutely fantastic. The testimonies, the people, I have about really amazing moderators. So a big thanks to the moderators. I know a lot of them are listening tonight on the broadcast, but big thanks. They're awesome. They keep things going really well and smooth on the chat room. But, it's around the clock, so 24/7. And we're featuring in the playlist. Of course, we got tons of stuff from Rob Skiba. And we'll be adding a lot more as well. But The Truth is Stranger Than Fiction, Controversy 7, Pastor Dean Odell. We got Richie from Boston. We got Russian Vids. We got Scrawny Tabrani. We got Carlos Piguerrero. We got D13 Watchman, Time to Repent, Watchman of the Harvest, Mr. Moots even in there. We got Zen Garcia. So again, for me, it was important. And we got all the links and description, and it's helping people that I really like that video. I want to go check out there. I want to check out this. So it's been a really good tool to start promoting some really good, recommended channels. Because again, in this Flat Earth community, if people are kind of wanting for a while to say just to stay in the biblical Flat Earth, well, where do they look? Because they start typing in and they come across Jaron or this or that, which Jaron does amazing work and Mark does awesome stuff, but they want a specialized, I want to go deeper. I want a Bible study almost, right? That's why this is such a great idea, and it's been a tremendous success. So if anyone is interested, the best way that you can go to my channel on YouTube, Celebrate Truth, or if you type in youtube.com/celebratretruth/live. you type in that URL, just Celebrate Truth/live, you'll hit whatever's going on at any time, and we'll be popping in from time to time. I'm looking to possibly have some surprise guests to pop in on the live stream, so I've kind of figured all that out, and I think there's going to be a huge potential to do a lot of fun stuff and announcements and different things on there. So, and it's pretty easy to find. And you're going to see a lot of really amazing biblical flat earthers. If anyone's not familiar with The Truth is Stranger Than Fiction, highly recommend you check him out. We have his stuff playing, round the clock as far as Rob. Even Pastor Dean Odell, he's done some great sermons. We even got Charles Lawson in there doing certain things. He's done some great stuff around that topic. And people are questioning. And I hear stories of people that are, at that stage where they're, getting ready to come out and basically talk about this publicly. And, they're weighing the pros and the cons or the cost. And there's always a cost for these things, and there's fear. And fear kind of grips us sometimes. And there's certain personalities where maybe we don't have as much fear. We just jump out. We're just like, I don't care. I'm going to do it. And maybe that's God chooses these type of individuals to do that, So I look at it. Sorry.
Or gluttons for punishment.
Oh, true. Oh, true. Yeah, that's the whole thing. But I never ever thought that it would be as nasty as it is. Yeah. When I first came to Flat Earth, I remember sitting there, and I remember like 3 days later coming to my wife and saying, "Sweetie, I think the Earth is flat." And she's like, "If it says it in the Bible, then it's true." But anyways, at that point, I'm thinking this is great. But the minute you start talking to people, it was like, wow, I never would have comprehended this amount of hostility, anger, all these emotions. It just wasn't on the radar. But again, it was too late. I was already being called to basically, you have to go out to the world and you have to start talking on this. So it was just like, okay, I'll do it regardless of what comes my way. I'm not going to back down. I'm going to stand on your word. And if the whole world laughs at me, even my family members laugh at me, it doesn't matter. And I know for a fact that little bit by little bit, I'm starting to see the fruit. I'm starting to see those seeds that were planted early on. They're starting to kind of, gesture. And so for me, it's kind of like, when we talk about salvation or when we talk about planting seeds, with the gospel, maybe this entire journey, also our videos that we produce and things that we do, social media, it's planting seeds. And again, we have to look at it that way as well, too. They might laugh at it. They might joke, it's almost like they might, kick the seed or whatever. But eventually, it might take hold. And all of a sudden they go, wait a minute, I'm going to take this topic serious. Most people laughed at this topic before they got into it, me included. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we can't be too surprised when someone kind of calls us a moron and laughs, because even if we didn't say that to someone, because we're kind of, polite gentlemen, we're probably thinking in the back of our mind, rolling our eyes, going, oh boy, they've lost touch with all reality, right? So that's why when people come at me, I'm just like, I'm okay, because I was kind of there and I understand that that's the natural response. But hey, that's not the end of the story. Lord, give me wisdom to how to approach this. If I keep pounding them over the head, it's like if you're with a group of people and you just start preaching Jesus over and over and over, there's a point when they're like, hey, knock it off, and it's not smart to continue doing it. So you have to kind of be creative around that. That's why I came out with Scientism Exposed. I wanted to have a tool that basically doesn't even say flat earth. It's not going to scare anyone off. They're just going to watch it and they're going to go, oh, wow. And if they want to continue on, pretty soon it's going to get to them questioning the earth and stuff. But to me, it wasn't about the shape of the earth. It was about questioning what was taught through scientism, and do you really believe what the Bible says?
Yeah. Well, this is going to be an exciting year, man. I mean, looking at what do you think is going to happen next year? I mean, if we look back at the last, 2015 was, for most of us, that was when we were introduced to the topic. I understand probably there's a few guys out there that may have been voices crying in the wilderness for a long time, but sort of the big awakening, if you will, was 2015, and that was met with tremendous pushback. Very few were looking into it, and the ones that were getting just abused. 2016, there was definitely a lot of abuse, but there was more people paying attention. I know for like my audience, I already had a pretty large and growing audience before Flat Earth, and when they saw me go into it, they're like, "Oh no, dude's lost his mind," But then after a year, and seeing the abuse that I was taking and seeing that I wasn't backing off, that was the year that many of them said, okay, well, maybe I'll look into it, and then they were like, and that's what I've been telling people, like, take 24 hours. I don't care if it's all in one day or spread out over a week. Take a 24-hour period of your life and look into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if you do, you're done after that. I mean, you're gonna go down a deep rabbit.
We're sorry to interrupt, but we're definitely going to see things. I don't know if you ever caught my interview with Gons from Canary Cry. I don't like. I did a. Oh, okay, but I've done a few interviews with people that have come out really strongly against Sky. I've done it with yeah, exactly. And I'm saying behind the scenes and in certain things in those interviews, trust me, it's not open and shut. Like it's not a shut case with them. Of course, there's reasons, and a lot, to tell you the truth, has been emotional. And again, we can say the same thing. We've been attacked, but a lot of the stuff is maybe it wasn't fair. I wasn't giving a chance because it was just I was turned off by just how much hate and how much this came my way. And I mean, I think for most people, like you said, I mean, you'll look at sometimes some days and say, why am I even doing this? Why am I putting up with this abuse, right? But you are, right? You're called. This is your ministry. This is where you're at. But there's certain people that wouldn't put up with that. So there's certain kind of personalities where I'm not putting up with it. I'm not going to look into it. You've lost your chance for me to even looking at it because you don't approach me the right way. So unfortunately, there was an infancy, there was an immaturity when we first came onto this. We were like, when you first come to Christ, you're just like, yay, but you're immature. You're on fire, you're on passion, but you're not completely wise either. You're telling everyone they're going to hell maybe, or whatever, right? This is me. My story was I was immature. I was passionate. I had a big heart. But again, I just, was saying the wrong things and coming off the wrong way. And over time, you kind of, mature and you learn kind of how to deal with it. So I'm just looking at the fact that I've heard, many stories, many individuals that this is percolating, this is happening. There are discussions, there are board meetings going on. There are pastors that are meeting together from multiple churches, different denominations. This discussion is not going away. And it's not, I mean, I've heard of studies where they're having it and there'd be two people that would be like, yeah, but that's what the Bible says. And they'd be like, yeah, this. They're like, yeah, guys, but they have 50 verses. How many do we have? Oh, wow. So they're starting to weigh it. But again, this topic is it's kind of like JFK, 9/11, lizard man, moon landing, flat earth. So on the spectrum of like complete crazy conspiracy theories for the world to look at it as far as tinfoil hattery, this is the upper echelon. There is nothing crazier. So I explain that to people all the time. I'm like, you're coming at people with the highest level of like the moon is made out of cheese almost in their mind, right? You have to almost go, where are they now with like 9/11? Where are they now with like, Satan working within the education system? Like, do they even have a construct that Satan is actually real? Most Christians would be like, oh, I believe in Satan, but they believe he just kind of like, roams around or he just possesses people. But the fact is he's working with institutions. He's working with very, very high sophisticated levels, of organizations throughout, the centuries. But again, until you get your head around that, then it kind of, okay, well, I want to look into that. Wow. That's crazy. Look at this. Look at the government. Look at the UN. Look at the spirituality just seeping out of the UN. I mean, you start reaching the UN, for a fact that thing is run by something spiritual. That's not just, hey, we want world peace. They want a complete governed new age order. And I mean, so these are the type of mindset. So I always tell people, look at who you're talking to. Where are they at? So I always kind of size someone up and I'll start with 9/11 or I'll start with some conspiracy. Because again, if you get to the moon landing, and they go, dude, of course they landed on the moon. Are you ever a moron? You honestly don't believe they landed on the moon? You got work to do. You just do. Unless you're dealing with an absolute Bible literalist that will take it serious and say, let's dig into the Bible. I really want to know what's going on. But if you're not dealing with like a Bible literalist, like an intense one, if you're dealing with someone to show them how Satan could deceive the whole world, you got to at least start with 9/11, or you got to start with Sandy Hook, or you have to start with like all these things, whatever that topic is. So they go, oh, wow, I had no idea that basically on high levels of government, they're actually like wearing robes. Like Bohemian Grove, for example. I'll size a conspiracy theorist up. I'll run into someone and they'll be talking about 9/11 and I'll be like, dude, you know what Bohemian, I'll say Bohemian Grove. And they'll be like, what? I'll be like, Skull and Bones. What are you talking about? Okay. So then I start there. I kind of, have to get into Skull and Bones or the Bohemian Grove, because for most people, when they learn that pretty much all the presidents and all the pretty much major players of the world meet each year with robes, with a mock human sacrifice to like Moloch, and they toss it into the fire. And these guys are like presidents. These guys are like the world leaders. And these guys are doing an occultic, satanic ceremony. And it's been documented by the BBC. I mean, you can't argue with these things. Something dark and sinister is going on with the world. And these guys are running the world. So do you think they have good intentions to try to educate you? No, they have a plan to indoctrinate you and prepare you for what's to come. because they're all preparing for, the Antichrist to come on the scene, whether he comes as an alien life form or alien deception as part of that deception, or however it happens, he comes from the abyss, whatever. They're preparing the world to accept it and to accept that ideology, and basically that's the way the world is run. So these guys are all on agenda. They're in there to indoctrinate and prepare the world. And it takes multiple generations to basically prepare most of the world. I mean, they have to chip away. There's always been that strong, whatever, Christian influence and stuff. And America is kind of really big because, again, it was kind of this type of foundation. But little by little bit, most people are starting to kind of turn away from the Bible. Bible says this, but that's irrelevant. We got to change with the times, so let's, go marry a dog, because it's under love, stuff like this, like bestiality. And I remember youth pastor like 15 years ago told me, dude, you are going to see bestiality, but even in your lifetime, you're going to see pedophilia being approved. I'm like, dude, no, there's no way. He goes, they always introduce it through humor. And I'm like, interesting. Yeah. And if you actually looked at it, the gay whole thing came in, Jack, of course you remember Three's Company, right? It was all funny. Everyone laughed. No one's laughing now. You would never see a comedy where anyone was making fun of someone trying to be gay or whatever. But now you're moving into like bestiality, which is already, we're past the humor ones, all the little jokes. Hey, so what did you do last night? Well, I was in bed. Well, what do you mean? Oh, I was in there with Rusty. You were in bed with your dog, and all this innuendo, and everyone's laughing, having a good time, but they just introduce it. They introduce it through humor. But again, we're dealing with one last pivotal thing that the entire world looks at as really horrific and bad. It's the worst sin of all sins, is pedophilia. But again, that is going to be eroded. But there's a bunch of work that has to be done before they get there. But again, we're seeing it right across. And again, how is scientism going to play in with the entire, transgender agenda, LGBT, all of these things, climate change? And we didn't have enough time to get into all these other areas. And Scientism Exposed 2, I'm going to be touching on climate change and also vaccinations, the whole thing. Now, there's no link between autism and vaccinations and stuff. But again, these are all protected by scientism. Scientists concluded, 97% of scientists agree. Well, can I talk to the 3%? I'd be very curious to find out what that 3% say scientifically, why they disagree with the 97. But they love to spout these figures, and no one stops for a second and goes, well, 97, majority rules, and we're dealing with a mob mentality, and mob mentality is rampant with scientism. If you don't get on the train, you don't believe in the Big Bang, you don't believe in black holes and dark matter, you know what? Get out. Because that's where we're heading. And we're heading into multi-universe and stuff like that. So if you want to hold us back, well, that's fine, but we're just not going to be associating with you. You're losing all your funding, and you won't get any funding because all of this agenda is in money, and it's definitely to basically start preparing the world. Not to mention, everyone's saying, oh, it's climate change, all these earthquakes and all these things. The Bibles are very clear that God's judgment is coming to the world. There would be the signs, there would be the birth pains, all these sort of things. And yet what does the world do? No, it's climate change. It's the ozone. But again, they needed an ozone. They needed a globe. They needed a Big Bang. They needed their cosmology to even bring in that lie to convince people that God's judgment isn't coming to the world, that he's not going to start using the birth pains as the signs of getting closer. People can't even see that time is getting shorter based on the birth pains and on the signs of the times that Jesus mentioned because of scientism. Scientism is erasing that and saying, no, we have it figured out. It's the ozone, it's heating, we're causing a big problem. So this whole thing is interconnected, and even that alone tears at the Bible and says, I don't care what Jesus said. He was off. We already know through science that's not true. The earthquakes are happening because, we got to pay our carbon tax because it's man that's creating all this crap, and we got to protect Mother Earth. And you get into Gaia worship, and it's all spiritual. We're just seeing the scientism front right now with the nice lab coats, but we're moving into the robes. Satanism, it's kind of like I always say, scientism, is basically Satanism with lab coats instead of robes. And that's exactly what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a very sophisticated level of Satanism that's disguised in science. And we have really been duped with a lot of it. Hopefully, the last thing I want to conclude with is just make sure that if you're going to hold on to something that's science, make sure it's truly scientific. Because if you find out that you've been holding on to something because you believed it was scientific, but then you found out it was more of a theory or scientism, then you better be careful, because if you're holding on to something so tightly and you're going to die with that because it's scientific, wouldn't it be crazy to learn, that wasn't true, that really you were holding on to something that really wasn't proven, it wasn't conclusive, it was still open for debate, and it was just another theory, and you chose to believe it. But don't believe something because the world told you there's no debate. It's the fact. is the truth, because that is the most dangerous level of Satanism. It's the most dangerous level of any religion. I don't care what you could say. Islam's a huge threat, or the New Age is a big movement. This one is like a Trojan horse. It comes in quietly. It comes undetectedly. It comes with dignity. It comes with prestige. And yet the whole world just kind of sucks into the whole thing. And yet you watch, they will embrace all the other religions, but there'll be one religion, there'll be one book that will be left out. Why? Because they're the biggest, they're the haters, they're the ones that are not helping us to get to our next level of evolution on the evolutionary. So again, that whole thing, while evolution seems like it's scientific, it's biological and all that, it's also spiritual. And these two things are going to merge, and they're going to teach us that basically we have to progress in our evolution, because as you know, simple life forms are going more complex. In our spiritual nature, we have to go to the next level, to ascend the universe or whatever. But they're going to teach it. It's going to blend together. I'm pretty much guaranteed on it, but we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think is going to happen? This year, I going into 2017, I see a lot more people at least open. They're not mocking as much. In fact, I'm almost seeing a reversal. All the people that were giving me flack, last 2 years, are now starting to give Bible teachers and ministries that aren't embracing the biblical cosmology. They're giving them heat now. Mm-hmm. And, so 2017, it's like a reversal. We got about 3 minutes left in the broadcast. What's your prediction, if we can speculate here?
My prediction, we're gonna see more and more people coming back to standing on the Word of God. It's going to be slow. It's going to be gradual. It's kind of like narrow is the way, broad is the way, these type of things. So this idea that basically everyone, by 2018 is going to wake up and 98% of the population are all going to see the truth, that's not going to happen, in my opinion. But what is going to happen is more and more people are going to take this subject seriously, whether they're looking at it from a scientific view, they want to know truth, they want to look at it from a secular point of view, or the people that are spiritual, more and more people will be like, I don't know, man, I'm at a pivotal point. Here's the world. They're telling me all sorts of things. I see where churches, I see where all sorts of people are going. I'm going to stand on the Word of God, not just morally. I'm going to stand on it. When it comes to creation, I'm going to stand on it. When it comes to prophecy, I'm going to stand on every single jot and tittle. I'm going to stand on it. And at the end of the day, if I'm found guilty for just clinging on to the Word of God and just believing it, because again, how sophisticated and smart did God expect us to be? There were the words. We took God at His word, and we're seeing it confirmed all over the place. And I believe that God would allow us to see it. Slowly, the world will start to see it. Unfortunately, most of the world will still not choose Him, because deep down inside, it's a sin. It's a sin problem. They spiritually hate Him. That's a whole other discussion for another night. But the reality is, at least they will know, because it says all people know, through creation that I exist. These are things that are put into every single person. They know deep down inside that I exist, but they have their excuses. They form their own gods, a God that appeases them, the God that they want to worship. My God would never do that, or my God would do this. Unfortunately, you can have that God or whatever you want, but it doesn't make it real. The fact is, there's one real God, there's one way, one truth, one life, and it's found in no one other than Jesus, John 14:6. And that's what I leave off with all of my videos at the end of them on Celebrate Truth is, I'm the way, the truth, and life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And if you're on a pursuit for truth, just remember the most important truth is the one that basically said He is the truth. And He is the only way. You can't work yourself. You can't do enough good things or pray or go to church or whatever. Nothing will make you be good enough to go. Somebody had to actually atone and, take your place so that you could basically, be united again, because God loved you so much. So that's what I'll leave with.
All right. We're just about out of time here. I'm looking at the vault here at Truth Frequency, and it just disappeared on me. So I can only guess that we have about 2 minutes left. So within the remaining 2 minutes or so that we have left, how can people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about what you're about or get your videos or
Sure.
Anything like that?
Yeah, well, the website is celebratetruth.org. So if you just go to celebratetruth.org, you'll find information. I got contact information there as well if you want to order any DVDs. We have the bulk orders, whatever, at a really, really super good price. If you want to hand them out, we want to make sure that if you're looking at this as a tool, honestly, there's tons of stories where people, whether it's a senior couple or someone that just wouldn't go to a YouTube video for 2 hours, this is a great way to put on a coffee table. And it introduces the subject very, very slowly. Like I mentioned, it doesn't even mention flat Earth, but if you are already along those lines, you're going to see exactly where this is heading. And I'm excited to bring up the sequel and also 3 in 2018, and we'll see everyone at FE 2017.
Right on. All right, Robbie, thanks so much for coming on, and you guys for listening. Video podcast back next Wednesday evening, 11 p.m. Central Standard Time. Good night, everybody.
How about the recent push to implement intelligent design in school curriculums?
It's very
dangerous.
bad. It's very dangerous.
You don't mess with the truth.
You can see an agenda